The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I saw a pale horse.
The beast.
We're told in the book of Revelation.
This is not a human child.
Isn't an angel?
Satan.
Armageddon is almost upon us.
Order the use of nuclear weapons.
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for.
From one end of the world to the other, I will oppose you.
They're here.
Welcome to the end of the world.
Wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. This is P.I.D. Radio.
From the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, greetings. It's P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Welcome to our humble bunker. Yeah, how long's it been since we did a P.I.D. Radio? Like 10 years?
Well, in dog years, probably. I'd have to look it up, actually. It's been a while.
Long time.
I had to go into the website and change some settings because we upgraded our internet service. And suddenly, when you clicked on any of the links on the PIDradio.com website, they were bringing up a 404. We were 404'd all over the place. So, but that's been fixed. So we're good.
We were Harrison Ford all over the place.
Yeah. October of 2016. So just over a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been over a year. Well, 13 months ago, I don't know. We weren't able to do Sci Friday for 2 weeks in a row. I can't remember why we didn't do it 2 weeks ago. But
because I wasn't feeling well.
No, last week, 2 weeks in a row, you weren't feeling well? Well, Derek had a spider bite.
Yeah.
And that spider bite became infected and he had to go to the doctor. And yeah, maybe it was because of that both times. But so we apologize to those of you who, both of you who watched Sci Friday. We appreciate it.
Yeah. But no, that's what it was because it was last week Friday. And we're not doing one this weekend because it's the Thanksgiving holiday.
Oh, that's right. That was the reason for the
those are the 2 weeks in a row.
Yes.
But the antibiotics from the spider bite were causing some side effects, dizziness, loss of appetite, and nausea. And
no superpowers, though.
No superpowers. So clearly it wasn't a radioactive spider. Yeah. I didn't catch it, so I wasn't able to nuke it and then have it bite me again either. So no luck on that score. In fact, I didn't even feel it when it bit me. Most likely it was when I was just hauling some furniture from the deck out to the shed and stuck some folding chairs up underneath my arm, and the spider was probably up underneath there.
You were being a good guy.
Well,
taking care of things, doing the stuff that a guy's supposed to do.
Except that guys are supposed to look for spiders when you've got stuff that's been sitting outside in a rural area for any length of time.
You think?
Yeah. So, no, I kind of missed on that score. But anyway, we are there's so much going on in the world. We just didn't feel like we could wait another week before and besides, if we wait another week, we can try to stuff 3 weeks of content into a Sci Friday. It'll never happen.
It's kind of crazy. By the way, we're sharing the link to this to the Skywatch TV website and to the Sci Friday page. So you may be listening to this and thinking, PID Radio, what the heck is that? Well, Derek and I started doing PID Radio in March of 2005.
Yeah.
PID stands for Peering into Darkness. Mm-hmm. And we take a look at the spiritual battle behind the newspaper headlines. So, honestly, it's the same kind of stuff you and I talk about on Sci Friday and Skywatch TV all the time anyway.
Right.
So why not?
Yeah. And this is easy enough to do. We've got the equipment here at home to set this up and do this. So, which is kind of nice. We don't have to run down to the studio, dress up, put on makeup, and all that other fun stuff.
Although the clown makeup is really nice.
Well, it is true. It adds a certain level of je ne sais quoi credibility.
Oh gosh, no. And by the way, we really appreciate the fact that many of you supported us when we shared the posts to social media saying that we weren't going to be doing shows for Sci Friday. You guys are wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Lots of things to talk about in the news. PID Radio is we don't have to talk about only science stories.
No.
Anything goes.
Yeah, and this is what we did for quite a while. There was a period in our history where we were doing it daily. Other times we did it monthly. Other times, weekly. It's sort of come and gone. But that's how we first met Tom Horn.
Oh, yeah.
Contacted Tom Horn, Mike Heiser, Guy Malone, other people, Stan Deo, other people that you would know from Skywatch TV. We first contacted to be a part of our podcast on P.I.D. radio.
And we were
the equipment we were using then.
Oh, good grief! Shoot, yeah. I mean, honestly, it was string and gum practically.
Tin cans and
pretty much. We were amazed too that anybody would actually come on it with us and talk to us.
Yeah.
And back then, you and I listened almost every evening to Steve Quayle, and he often led us into directions and into areas that we had never researched. So we learned a lot from Steve, and now of course we get to call him friend.
Exactly. And that's how we got to meet Doug Hagman and Joe Hagman. Doug Hagman was a regular guest on my over-the-air radio program when I was hosting the show on the Eagle 93.9 in Columbia, Missouri, which was a secular conservative talk radio station. Sean Hannity, Neil Bortz, Michael Savage, and so forth. And then me in the afternoon. And Doug would come on once a week to talk about national security issues.
Oh, yeah.
And things like that. So,
and he knows his stuff, too.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. We never met Doug until 2014 at the Orlando Prophecy Conference. And it was sort of it was a mutual admiration society.
Oh, it
Doug
was.
Hagman, we finally get him in. And Doug was like, it's the Gilberts,
to which we were amazed.
Exactly.
You know us.
Anyway, well, now that we've got 6.5 minutes of blather out of the way.
No, that's going to be all blather. It's all blather all the time on PID radio. Let's face it.
Blather control. Right.
No, we have none. We really have none.
There was a story that you flagged, and I thought was really interesting because this is something that has a lot of implications for a big percentage of the Christians in the world, because as the world's largest denomination, and I'm going to say Christian, and I know that many of our listeners would disagree and would call them a cult. I'm talking about the Roman Catholic Church. There are a lot of genuine believers in those pews. There are. Now, the official church doctrines are in many cases based on tradition rather than on the Bible, and we reject that. Yeah, we do. Sola Scriptura. If it's not in the Bible, and if the traditions disagree with the Bible or add to, the Bible is very clear. If you add to or take away from these teachings, right, then you are to be anathema, eternally cursed.
Well, try to find a denomination that does not have human traditions associated with it. Sure. So that some are just out of the way, more egregious than others. Right. That out of the way, we pay attention to what the Roman Catholic Church does because of its influence on world Christendom. And credit where it's due. The late Chris Putnam was the first person I ever heard talk about the Jesuit priest who died in 1962, I think. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was a brilliant man, but like many intelligent men who can't rationalize in their own minds how God does what he's done or does what he does, they try to syncretize or try to assimilate the teachings of the Bible into science, which we think we understand. Well, he was a Jesuit. And that Jesuits are notorious for that. That's a lot of what... That's the bottom line, yeah. Right. And Teilhard came up with he was a paleontologist by training and a philosopher by nature. And he was the character that William Father
Peter...
Mellon.
Yeah.
Marin.
Yeah, Lancaster Marin, that William Peter Blatty based that character on in The Exorcist novel and movie. He came up with a concept that he called the Omega point, which Dr. Ray Kurzweil essentially just relabeled the singularity. This idea, it's based on this idea that Teilhard had that creation was getting more sentient, more intelligent as time went on. I mean, it's flies in the face of what we can observe, which is entropy. Things tend toward a maximum disorder. He believed that the species of the Earth, the actual biosphere, would someday wake up and that we would all then become one at the end with the Godhead, and that would be the omega point, the point at which we became one with the cosmos. Mm-hmm. I don't know how scientists and transhumanists consider this science, but there are a lot of people who buy into Dr. Kurzweil's singularity, this idea that we'll reach a point at which we become one with the cosmos wakes up, and becomes
pretty
sentient.
New Age.
Yeah, it really is. Well, the Roman Catholic Church back in the 60s put a warning on the writings of Teilhard because they said, well, this does not really comport with the Bible. This doesn't fit with the teachings of Scripture. I mean, we are not going to become gods someday or become one with God someday. That is a very Eastern concept. The Bible never, ever tells us that even in the new Jerusalem, in our resurrected, glorified form, that we are going to lose our individuality, that we are going to become one of a collective.
Right.
Sort of a heavenly Borg. That's not our destiny.
That wouldn't thrill me, to be honest with you.
No, it wouldn't me either. But the last three popes, Francis now, Benedict before him, and John Paul before him, all spoke very favorably about the teachings and writings of Teilhard. And now the Jesuits apparently are on the verge, it seems, of asking the Vatican to remove the warning from Teilhard de Chardin's writings.
Yeah, there was a meeting just recently taking a look at anthropology and how it fits with the modern or postmodern paradigm. And de Chardin was mentioned over and over and over again during these conclave. And at the end, a letter was written to the Pope, and it was a request. Can you please take the money tomb off of, which essentially is a warning label, off of de Chardin's writing? Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's been a decision yet from the Vatican, but Pope Francis has been pretty positive in his commentary regarding the writings. So it would surprise me if he would say no.
And being a Jesuit himself, Pope Francis may be predisposed to Teilhard's view of eschatology.
Yeah, I think so as well. There's a PDF that you can, and we'll put this in the show notes, there's a PDF that you can read from the meeting that essentially goes into what it is they had to say. They don't mention Teilhard de Chardin in the PDF itself, but it tells you what it is they're looking at. And I'd have to find the PDF. I know that let's see here. There was a phrase in here that I found, well, a number of them, that really sort of shock one. You go ahead and talk here for a sec.
Yeah, Teilhard was really more influential on the New Age movement than I think the Roman Catholic Church would like to think. He's also considered, he's been called by some the father of the internet. He was credited with coining the phrase social network. Mm-hmm. And that was part of his concept of the noosphere, which is the sphere of thought, the sphere of interaction between people. And he believed that this noosphere, this idea that we are more than just what's inside of our own heads, but we're the sum total of all of these interactions, this web, this worldwide web, if you will, of interactions that we have with other people. And that someday that web will become sentient, and that's when we hit the omega point and we all become as one. That, again, is a very Eastern, very Buddhist type of thought where we lose ourselves when nirvana is the total loss of self. Mm-hmm. And again, that's not scriptural. That is not biblical. That there is nothing in the Bible that tells us that our ultimate destiny as believers in Jesus Christ is to lose our individuality.
That's true. Amen to that. This PDF, which we found at cultura.va, which stands for the Vatican, has a number of parts to it. And part 2 is titled Redesigning Human Nature. Mm-hmm. You gotta love it, because they get into genetics, CRISPR-Cas9, but also into the idea of neuroscience, which leads into part 3, the human person, the brain, and the soul. And then they lead into part 4 in the society of intelligent machines. I'm going to repeat that because it's very important the way this is worded, and you know that they hashed this out. The title is In the Society of Intelligent Machines. This implies that it is beyond just an industrial robot here and there, or one AI that happens to be an algorithm that appears to be intelligent. This is a society of AI entities.
And where we fit in that is still, I mean, that's really an open question. I mean, that's something that Elon Musk again is back in the news this week, saying that there's only a 10 or 15% chance that we'll survive the creation of a super intelligent. Yeah, we feel sick about
it, but we're going to go ahead and
do it anyway.
It's just too darn cool not to do it.
Yeah, but he literally called it summoning the demon. The construction of a strong AI. I've been looking through this article here to see if there were references to specifically what and it's not just the last 3 popes, it's 4 popes. Pope Paul VI also spoke very specifically. And this was in 1966, said he praised a key insight. This is Paul VI, praised a key insight of Teilhard's on the theory of the evolution of the universe, pointed to it as a model for science, and quoted the author's statement, "The more I study material reality, the more I discover spiritual reality." Well, okay, that's true insofar as it goes, unless you're starting to say, as Teilhard did, that ultimately we're going to reverse entropy and we're all going to become, one whole at the end of the universe. That's not what the Bible is telling us. Benedict's comments, and I think these were really significant. In 2009, Benedict XVI said during a homily, the role of the priesthood is to consecrate the world so that it may become a living host, a liturgy. Now, host in the Roman Catholic sense is the wafer that is transubstantiated from a piece of bread into the body of Jesus Christ during the Mass.
So that says by becoming a living host, we become the body of Christ.
Exactly. So that the liturgy may not be something alongside the reality of the world, but that the world itself shall become a living host, a liturgy. This is also the great vision of Teilhard de Chardin. In the end, we shall achieve a true cosmic liturgy where the cosmos becomes a living host.
It isn't transhumanism, it's transubstantiation of the universe.
Right. We will all become God. And
good grief.
Again, this was and Benedict was the one, before he became the Pope, was the cardinal in charge of doctrine. I mean, I forget what the official title is, but he was the one who was the head of the division of the Vatican that enforced official doctrine.
And let's not forget that Benedict is still there, still
in the background,
influencing what's going on. Yes,
Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah,
kind of looks like him, doesn't he?
He does. He does.
I know that's neither here nor there. That's being silly. But the point, the reason,
imagine you being silly. We never get silly.
The reason we bring this up is because there are a billion people on this planet who call themselves Roman Catholic Christians or thereabouts. And if the Vatican, and not all of them agree with what the Vatican teaches, I get that. There are some very influential cardinals who are very upset at the direction that Pope Francis is taking things. But the point is that this is not just Francis. This is not a new direction with Francis. His two predecessors, plus when you go back to the 60s, Pope Paul VI, were all sort of pushing the church, or at least hinting that the church should move in the direction of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
But just remember that the Vatican is a powerful government entity.
Yes.
In the world. And it has nothing to do, when you look at theopolitics, it really has nothing to do with how the people in the pews feel about the decisions up top. The decisions up top, the decision makers up top, hobnob with decision makers who also have, a place at the table in theopolitics. I refer to that. It's the way I refer to geopolitics activities behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That are spiritually driven.
Right. And she's not talking smoke-filled rooms. She's talking about the principalities and powers.
Exactly. I'm talking about the spirits behind the whole thing.
And you cannot separate that from what happens in the headlines.
Exactly. Right. And whatever the Vatican decision is, it will influence those same decision makers at that table. And theopolitically speaking, if the decision is we're going to take off the warning label and we're all going to say, hey, he was great, let's just move in that direction, it will encourage those in the sciences who are trying to get funding for their various ideas to move toward an AI direction, transhumanist direction, and alter the DNA direction. It will give the green light to that movement.
There is a small but growing Christian transhumanist movement. In fact, I'm going to write about that for a book that Defender Publishing is putting out next year. Tom has asked me to write on that chapter.
And we can't give you the title. Sorry. Ain't happening.
Yeah, but I have a couple of people I'm going to talk to about that. One who I've already interviewed, Reverend Christopher Bennick, who's a Presbyterian in Florida. And we've talked a couple of times and exchanged a few communications back and forth through Twitter. He's not always happy with the headlines that Tom posts at skywatchtv.com. It's like
Tom is rather creative, but honestly, for the most part, he gets you to read it.
Well, that's the point.
The truth is, that's how social media is. You need to, in order to get the information, you have to read the article. And if the headline is boring, you probably won't read it.
Right. And the issue that I have with Christian transhumanists is that when you cross the line from using technology that could be considered transhumanist technology, like medical advances, and say that this is now part of Christ's redemptive work, which is the phrase that Reverend Bennick has used to justify transhumanism. God wants us to participate in his No, Christ's redemptive work was done on the cross. It is
finished. Have you read that part?
Exactly. That crosses the line for me. Yes, we should try to improve the quality of life for those around us. That's, what those verses in the Bible about taking care of widows and orphans are about, and taking care of the sojourner who's within your borders and that sort of thing.
And love your neighbor as you love yourself. Right. That's really what that implies.
Right. But it does not say that we are to use technology in any means necessary to try to achieve virtual immortality, that our salvation is coming through technology, because that means everyone who had the bad luck to die before we figured out how to defeat death through technology, well, they're just out of luck forever. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Theologically, it doesn't make any sense. Theologically, that makes God really, like all these people up before the 21st century, they're just dead forever.
Let me tell you who it makes God. It makes Lucifer God.
Yeah.
Because Lucifer and his minions are the ones who gave the secret knowledge to mankind.
Right. The idea that we can achieve apotheosis, that we can create heaven on earth.
Through science, which is all that word means. Yeah. Knowledge, science, same thing.
That's Luciferian.
Yes, it is.
So anyway, they're well-intentioned, but I think that they need to figure out their eschatology. This John Haller, who does a great weekly prophecy update from his church there just outside Columbus, Ohio, and you can find it on YouTube every week. Very, very smart man. And he was right on when he said, I can tell you a lot about somebody's theology just from their eschatology. What do they believe about prophecy? Because what you believe about what is to come really kind of defines how you approach living out your Christian walk today.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, true.
And if you believe that if you're an amillennial, well, then it's kind of falls to us to try to make the millennial reign happen here on earth. If we believe that, in a premillennial return of Jesus Christ, that he comes back, establishes his kingdom for 1,000 years, and that there's nothing we can do to bring on the end times.
Did you say amillennial or postmillennial?
Amillennial. I mean, if you're amillennial, we're in the millennium now.
Exactly.
So we got to make it happen.
The postmillennialists, I think, have fallen into a similar trap in that they do believe that it's up to us to bring on the millennial age, and then Christ returns at the end of that.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. It can because that's the basis of dominion theology.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, don't get us started on that. We don't have enough time for that.
Right.
You're going to take a left turn. And who doesn't love a left turn, especially on the day after Thanksgiving?
In Albuquerque?
Oh, yeah. Charlie Manson just died.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a really interesting story that research seems to indicate that at any given time, there are 2,000 serial killers at large in the United States.
Oh, sleep well. Good night, everybody.
Well, I bring this up because, spiritually speaking, it would surprise me if this were true 200 years ago.
Okay.
The Red Wing Saga, which is all about spiritual warfare in the 19th century, leading up into the 20th century, because the books will end at 1948. It begins with the Jack the Ripper murders, which are the most infamous serial slayings in history.
Mm-hmm.
Not the most prolific,
no,
but probably the best known.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at all countries, nearly everybody. Oh, Jack Ripper, I know who that is. If someone had told the people in England at the time, you've got, let's just take it down by a factor of 10. Because England is much smaller than the United States. You've got 200 Jack the Rippers living in England right now.
Wow.
That's what this is saying. But I really, even though I personally believe that the entity behind Jack's slaying, the real murders in London during 1888, were spiritually driven, I think also if you look at the idea of serial killers now, their lives indicate some sort of spiritual, connection that is just not good.
Mm-hmm.
They're not generally, happy-go-lucky men and women.
No.
They're usually very troubled from an early age.
So this researcher developed an algorithm
based on the known serial killers and the population and looking at statistics.
Mm-hmm.
So statistically speaking, at any given time, there would be 2,000 serial killers at large in the United States. Again, I would say that 100 years ago, 200 years ago for sure, but 100 years ago even, this number would never have been true. I think as we reach the end of the age, that spiritual interference in the lives of human beings and the demand for bloodshed is on the increase.
You may be right, and it may be a reinforcing loop. I mean, I know that from the standpoint of actual blood shed, the abortion statistics don't. It's not, because of the size of the children involved, and not very large. But when you look at the sheer number, I mean, we've turned it into an assembly line process where we're on the high side of 50, almost 60 million since Roe v. Wade,
right?
Just in the United States alone.
But as heinous as I think abortion is, and I really do, I am not in favor of abortion in any way, shape, or form. I think that in the mind of the women who go to these clinics, many of them are in the early weeks of pregnancy, and they really do. They've been programmed to falsely believe that this is just tissue and nothing more. It's nothing different than popping a zit.
Yep.
However, a serial killer is different. He or she makes a choice to take another human life, but often in a way that is almost occult in nature.
But my point is that it's possible that because we have facilitated this assembly line of the murder of small children, and while the mother may not see it that way, there have been some stories, and I've not been able to verify them, but there have been some stories indicating that some of the people working at these clinics understand what they're doing.
Well, that is true, and I hadn't even thought about that.
But is it possible that by facilitating the one, it's encouraging more wickedness among of the other type, the serial killers? Let
me just sort of build on that a little bit. If you look at forensic psychology, most profilers would tell you that a serial killer has hallmark childhood events, and one of those is living in a broken home.
Yeah,
100 years ago, broken homes weren't that prolific.
Right.
Now they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Fathers are missing in half or more of homes.
Yeah. That's not something that you hear talked about, but I've seen a couple of stories, guys who've written columns on this over in recent years, looking at some of the mass shootings that have taken place in the U.S. over the last 20 years and looking at the household situation, the family situations of those involved. And in all of those cases, I shouldn't say most all, in most of those cases, if I remember correctly, the father was not present. I have seen articles saying, oh, well, they were all on psychotropic drugs. Well, yeah, that may be part of it too. Mm-hmm. But the presence of both parents in the family, and especially the impact and presence of a father, seems to be another common thread.
Yeah, I think so too. It speaks to our society that in many ways, if you think of ourselves as, those in the Christian church, those with are paying attention, we know we're standing on a battlefield. You're born on a battlefield. The spirits are trying to capture the souls of our babies the minute they're born, assuming they are born. But far too many of us are sending our children out into that battlefield, waving goodbye. They have no armor on. They're not ready for anything.
Right.
And that's families that have two parents. Imagine a cash-strapped mother only, maybe even unmarried mother, who's trying her best to raise her kids, and especially a young man who has no father to identify with, and she may not be a believer. Mm-hmm. She's sending that boy out, may as well be out there with nothing on.
Yeah. In our culture, even those who claim to be evangelical born-again Christians, according to research from the Barna Group, majority don't believe that Satan is a literal entity, that the Holy Spirit is a literal entity and real. So if you're not a believer and you don't even have the trappings, the appearance of being a Christian, I mean, what how prepared can you possibly be in this supernatural war? I've very quickly found a couple of the articles that I thought I had remembered reading in the past. The Federalist,
good
columnist named Peter Hasson, several years ago. This was going back a couple of years to the shootings committed by Dylan Roof in South Carolina. Whenever we face a shooting like the one in Charleston, South Carolina, we hear a lot about gun control, but never about a major contributing factor, fatherless men. Aftermath of tragedies like Charleston or Sandy Hook, where all those school children were killed. Americans hear the shared characteristics of the shooters. Typically, they're young males who obtained a gun, used drugs legally, or the duh is in the article, by the way, legally or illegally, dropped out of school and committed or planned suicide as the grand finale to their murders. But to focus on these characteristics is to focus arbitrarily on the 12 to 24 months before the shooting. It ignores the roots of the problem, the household. As University of Virginia professor Brad Wilcox pointed out back in 2013, quote, from shootings at MIT, the Tsarnaev brothers, to the University of Central Florida, to the Ronald McNair Discovery Learning Academy in Decatur, Georgia, nearly every shooting over the last year in Wikipedia's list of U.S. school attacks involved a young man whose parents divorced or never married in the first place, end quote. His observation is largely ignored. And then another story from... this is from a place called Intellectual Takeout just about a month ago, October 2017. Mass shooter Stephen Paddock, the Las Vegas killer. Dylan Roof, Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook. Wade Page, John Zawahiri, and Scott Evans Decry all come from broken families.
Charlie Manson, who just died.
Charlie Manson.
Never knew his dad. Never.
In fact, his birth certificate read no name
Maddox.
Right. So that is a key point, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that the major media is not going to have the guts to tackle.
No, because it's not popular right now. Honestly, I love the fact that women can be strong. I really do. I try to be a strong woman myself, but to somehow prop up women by saying that we don't need men, that's foolish.
Was it Gloria Steinem, a woman needs a man like a like a fish needs a bicycle. Yeah. This guy
all
at this
those
article,
biking fish out there. Hey, look.
Goes through. He names Dylan Roof, Elliot Rodger. Remember him in Santa Barbara?
Yes.
Shot 6 people to death. John Zawahiri killed 5 people in Santa Monica. Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook. Wade Page, white supremacist, shot 6 Sikhs in Milwaukee before being killed in August of 2012. Omar Mateen, 49 people at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Says he might be an exception. His parents were not divorced, but they were distant. So anyway, it's a common thread. And while we might hear something about psychotropic drugs, we never, when it comes to this type of violence in our society and this type of, again, Charles Manson being sort of the granddaddy of them all, never hear about the role that a family along the lines of what God designed played in the upbringing and leading this child down that path.
Well, the enemy's been taking pot shots at the family for a long time and has finally succeeded, it seems, in just splitting it up. Because, as you've said many, many times, the family unit is the smallest battle formation on the spiritual battlefield. And if you can break that up, then you, as I say, you have essentially removed all protection from these children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wish that was original to me. I'd like to take credit for it, but sadly, I've got it written down here somewhere who it was who said that. It was at a men's conference I attended one weekend, a men's retreat from the church where we got married back in St. Louis. But
it was really good.
Very, very wise observation. If you don't have the rest of your unit covering for you, you are easy pickings for the enemy.
Well, hang on. We're going to take another left turn and go to something completely different.
Well, I wanted to, actually, before we jump off of that, this kind of ties together the first 2 stories that we brought up.
Oh, please do.
We were talking about transhumanism and a society of intelligent machines into serial killers. Well, there's a professor at University of Southern California who's programming an artificial intelligence to think like the Zodiac Killer.
That's such a bad idea.
Yeah. There's one of the Zodiac Killer was active in the late 60s and early 70s in Northern California, credited with killing 5 people for sure, but they think it might be as many as 28.
Yeah, depending on the person, the source.
Right. And he wrote cryptic notes to the press to kind of taunt the press. And one of his codes, which is called Z340, and I guess people who are into this sort of thing are more familiar with this than I am. I was not aware that anything he had written was still unsolved. And maybe this is unsolvable. For all we know, this is just the product of a disordered mind that doesn't mean anything. But cryptologists are still trying to crack this cipher, the Z340 code. And so this professor at USC is creating an AI to mimic the thought patterns of the Zodiac Killer to try to solve this code.
The last thing we need is an artificial intelligence that goes all serial killer on us.
Well, here's the thing. The AI is now writing poetry in the Zodiac Killer's style.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, I'm not going to read this on the air.
No, you don't want to know.
But it is really, really strange. What's even really strange is that when you look at the picture of the professor from USC along with the
that's really, really creepy.
He looks kind of like the witness. The sketch by the police artist from the witness. Now, not likely because we're talking about a guy who was active almost 40 plus years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyway, what is the risk of programming an AI that could potentially think billions, if not trillions of times more quickly than a human to think like a serial killer?
And has access to all sorts of humans, just go shopping online. Well, let's see. It's Black Friday. Think I'll go pick out my next victim.
I have no mouth and I must scream. Okay.
Well, I'm going to move in a direction that has to do with the internet and privacy, because a new law has just been passed in the Judiciary Committee, and it's going to be voted on, I assume. The committee, House Committee voted 27-8, saying, we like this bill. It's called the USA Liberty Act. Who doesn't like something called the Liberty Act? It's going to be so great for all of us. But it's taking even more of our privacy away from us.
Yeah.
So much for FISA court. Don't need it.
Well, this just proves the theory that if you want to know what a bill Congress has passed does, look at the title and assume it does exactly the opposite. Like the Patriot Act, Liberty Act is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is apparently the FISA bill, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, F-I-S-A, is going to expire December 31st. So there's a panic. It happened 2 years ago. There's a panic. We've got to replace it with something. Well, 2 years ago was the Freedom Act. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So now it's the Liberty Act.
Yeah, again, we just want to figure out what it does. Just assume that it does exactly the opposite of what it says it does. One thing, and in fact, I've got people are going to freak out this weekend. I've got a view from the bunker that'll go up this weekend as well. So,
what?
Yeah.
Those Gilberts, what are they doing?
I had the opportunity to talk to Joel Richardson earlier this week.
Yeah.
And we did a brief segment for Skywatch TV. So people who watch the 5 and 10 daily updates on Skywatch TV would already have seen that part. But we kept talking after we ended for the television, and I will put this up at YouTube on my YouTube channel as well as at vftb.net. But it has to do with what's going on in Saudi Arabia. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the King Salman, is in his 80s, and he has designated his favorite son Mohammed as the Crown Prince. Well, over the last couple of weeks, MBS, as observers call him, his friends. They're on a
Mohammed bin Salman.
Yeah, an acronymal basis.
Yeah.
Mohammed bin Salman has rounded up dozens of other members of the royal family, plus...
not for a party. He didn't round him up for a party.
No, they're holding it at the Ritz-Carlton, but it's in the lobby, and they're basically on mattresses there. And according to some reports, there are mercenaries involved. There was an accusation that Academy, which is the old Blackwater, was involved. Eric Prince says, we have nothing to do with it. But it appears that Mohammed bin Salman is trying to do two things here. First is to eliminate potential rivals to the throne. Since the Saudi kingdom was founded back in the 30s, in the wake of the dissolution, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire after World War I, the Saud family was essentially told by the Western powers, Britain in particular, you guys can be kings as long as you play ball, which means access to the oil reserves of Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. Well, the Saud family did, and it's made them very, very wealthy. Stinking rich. Mm-hmm. Obscenely rich.
Yeah, and they put a lot of their money in British banks.
Yeah. So it's worked out well for the Brits. It's worked out well for the Saud family. The thing is, these Saudi royals tend to have lots and lots and lots of sons who are on the payroll. They had so much money that essentially everybody in the country was getting a stipend from the government. So really, the country doesn't produce anything except oil. Well, now you've got a few hundred members of the royal family. As I understand it, I'm not an expert, but I've tried to read as much as I could over the last couple of weeks to figure out what's going on. They sort of rule by consensus. The royal family runs the country. They have areas of responsibility. They're organized like silos. And, we run infrastructure and we run telecommunications and we run, the oil business and whatever. And they don't communicate or cooperate much because they're like fiefdoms, but so far it's worked.
It proves once again everything you need to know about geopolitics you can learn from watching the Godfather movies.
Yes, exactly. Oh, Godfather. It's really funny because I was just reading something about this the other day about the ancient world and how these ancient sheikhs 3,000 years ago would have supplicants that would come to them and promise their loyalty in exchange for. It's like, well, that's what's going on. That was going on 100 years ago in Sicily. Yeah, it's the same. Human nature doesn't really change much over the centuries.
Oh, Don bin Salman.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, Muhammad is making his power play, and so he's the family is not ruling by consensus anymore because Muhammad wants to be the one who calls all the shit. He's Michael Corleone. Okay, He's eliminating rival claimants to the throne, and he's eliminating the other members of the five families. Well, in this case, one of the other families happens to be Shia Islam. In other words, Iran.
Yes,
and Iran has actually, give credit where it's due. Iran, the Assad family in Syria, and the government of Vladimir Putin in Russia have really outmaneuvered NATO and the West in the Middle East. Israel is much more afraid of the Shias than they are Sunnis for some reason. I'm not sure. I mean, they know better because they live there. It's their neighborhood. So I assume they know who the bullies are and who to watch out for. Okay. But as I understand Islam, it's the Sunnis who are the ones who want to bring on the Mahdi like tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You know, the
Shia are just waiting for him to show up.
The Shia are waiting for him to show up, but they're not in any hurry because Shia Islam is controlled by the mullahs in Iran. Or not the mullahs, the ayatollahs. Mm-hmm. And they're sort of like the Sanhedrin back in Jesus' day. If the Messiah shows up, we're all out of a job. So they really aren't in a hurry for the Mahdi to show up.
Did you see, though, that bin Salman just, I think it was yesterday or this morning, I saw the story this morning, poking the Iran with a stick. He's yes. calling the Ayatollah a Nazi, saying he's Hitler reborn.
Right. And that's the thing. Mohammed bin Salman is not only trying to consolidate his hold on power, and the reason he's having to use, according to some sources, mercenaries to do it is because the armed forces and intelligence services were loyal to other members of the royal family. So he had to get them out of the way using mercs to do it. Whether the royal family or rather the armed forces and intelligence services will now be loyal to him is still a question. We don't know. But the Saudis in general are not happy with Iran creating a Shia arc, a Shia crescent from Iran, from the Persian Gulf, basically, through Iraq and Syria and Lebanon over to the Mediterranean. And essentially, with the Islamic State falling apart over the last 4 months or so, the Islamic State's down to one little enclave on the border between Iraq and Syria. And thanks to Iran and Russia, it looks like they're about to be wiped out. Now, of course, they've relocated to Libya because we, in our wisdom,
took out the strong man there. And Gaddafi, you know, we saw he died. Ha, ha, ha. Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
The Saudis are looking to do, they're looking to provoke a war.
It's really interesting.
And apparently they want to do it in Lebanon by poking Hezbollah with a stick, which means the Saudis will have to do it with the Israelis, which is really interesting because they don't have official diplomatic relations.
No, the things that are taking place there right there in the Middle East right now they're puzzling.
Yes.
Not only is Putin making nice with a number of world leaders there, but also we got Hariri, who was just elected and then resigned as prime minister in Lebanon, saying, I think I'll just be something else now. And he did that from Saudi Arabia.
Right. They summoned him to Saudi Arabia.
This is the son of the man who was assassinated in
Back
Lebanon.
in 2005,
exactly.
Right. The Hariri family is very wealthy, but a lot of it has to do with the businesses that they've had in Saudi Arabia. Now, as I understand it, Saad Hariri, the son of Michael Hariri, who was assassinated, is not nearly the businessman that his father was. The Saudi kingdom is having financial issues because the price they pushed down the price of oil and natural gas to hurt Iran, but it's also been draining their treasury reserves, which is the other thing that Mohammed bin Salman is trying to do. By rounding up all of these guys on a so-called corruption cleanup drive, he apparently is torturing them to get the passwords for their secret bank accounts and transferring their wealth to the kingdom.
That's like a scene from MI5.
Because these guys are worth literally billions of dollars. In fact, there's one report that Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, who was a major investor in Fox News, News Corp, was being tortured by being hung upside down and beaten. Well, I mean, this is a guy who's worth like $30 billion.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that he still has power. All it takes is for someone to come along, kill you or take you out, and then take your bank accounts. I mean, that happens in Russia all the time. The oligarchs are arrested and their money seized. Their property seized, their company. In fact, by driving down the price of oil and even having the blockades so that you good luck getting any oil from us. Saudi Arabia saying we're not selling. It just has opened the market for Russia.
Well, yeah, Russia has. It's a strange situation out there. Again, they've kind of flooded the market with oil. There's a lot of it out there right now, and it's really put a hurt on the American oil industry because the shale industry in the U.S., in North Dakota, Southern Illinois, about the time we left in 2015, there were guys there who were convinced that Southern Illinois was about to experience the same kind of oil boom that's been ongoing in Western North Dakota.
Yeah.
Well, that's slowed down a lot because when the price of oil drops below $80 a barrel, it's not really profitable anymore to dig up that shale. But prior to 2015, when oil was at $100 to $110 a barrel, there were speculators coming into Southern Illinois from out of state who were buying up leases.
Farms.
They were buying at least the leases. They weren't buying the farms. They were buying the mineral rights.
Yeah, exactly.
And packaging them together and flipping them to other investors.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to actually have to do the digging
no, but like with anything else, if
right.
I can just figure out a way to monetize this.
Exactly. So that all went away. And we moved at just the right time because it would have been really difficult for me to sell as much steel in that territory the last couple of years.
Thank you, Lord.
But there are a lot of pieces in play here. It hurt the American economy. It hurt the Russian economy as well when the price dropped. When the price goes up, everybody will be helped. But of course, it means more money back in the coffers of the Iranian government. And if they've got this clear path across Iran, Syria, and Iran, Iraq, and Syria to the Mediterranean, again, that opens up the path for that pipeline, which is at the heart of all of this, the natural gas pipeline from a very large natural gas field in the Persian Gulf. The Saudis and their allies want to take it from the west side of the Gulf through Syria and benefit. The Iranians want to take it from the east side of the Persian Gulf and send it through Iraq as sort of a Shia pipeline and benefit there. So that's what's going on here.
Follow the money.
It really is, when you get right down to it, all about the petrocarbons.
It really is. By the way, in case you've been looking at the news and wondering what's going on in Yemen, if you are not inclined to sit and actually look, we look at it for you. Yemen is a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
No, you're right.
Yeah, Iran. Yes, it is. And the leadership is Shia Muslim. It's a minority, but still. And there was a time right after the Ottoman Empire split up that Yemen actually belonged in part to the British government. But they allowed the Sauds to sort of take control of it. Because it is now a war-torn country, millions of people are without homes. They are without food, without water, and consequently disease is running rampant. All four horsemen are active in that area.
Yeah. And it's sad because that part of the Arabian Peninsula, because there's a belt there along the southern coast there in Yemen that actually gets a fair amount of rain. That's where frankincense was grown and spices and things.
No,
and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a very wealthy. I mean, the Queen of Sheba.
That's true. Yes, that is true.
But because once the scales start to tip in favor of one culture over another, one group of people over another, then the gravitational pull, cities from farms, the West from the impoverished Southern Hemisphere, people start migrating and moving. The power tends to gravitate and consolidate in areas, London, New York, Washington, wherever.
Yeah.
And the ones who don't have power are less and less likely to get power unless something overturns the apple cart.
And don't forget.
It's reasons like that Jesus said, the poor you will always have with you. Because
That's
there
true.
will always be evil people serving the dark Lord who are willing to take advantage of their fellow men.
Exactly. And don't forget that when you look at the headlines on social media or on news sites, and you see this happening in this part of the world and this happening, there are spirits behind that.
Right.
And they want to concentrate people into large cities because they're more controllable there.
Right.
And the spirits don't get along.
Oh, no.
Don't think they do. They're warring as well. And we are, we're frankly collateral damage on the battlefield because they are lobbing things at each other.
They rebelled against their creator. Why wouldn't they fight for control between themselves? Sure.
And speaking of things like that taking place, we're going to move to Africa really quickly because Zimbabwe's leader, he's been around for probably decades, 60 years or
35 years.
Yeah.
He founded his political party. He's been around longer than that, but he founded the political party that he's part of 35 years ago. Mugabe. Robert Mugabe.
He is, he's been told that he can live. He and his wife, they've been put up in a hotel, and we'll let you live. It was essentially a coup. You know it's a coup when you turn on the news and there's a man in a uniform, a military uniform, telling you there's been no coup.
Nothing to see here. Move along.
Move along. Well, China has a lot of business interests in Zimbabwe. Has for a long time. From the very early days, in fact.
Yes.
In fact, they helped train the rebels during the, the 1960s, whenever, maybe that's where I get the number 60. But when the revolution was taking place that Zimbabwe was helping, that Mugabe was helping to lead, China was helping to train them.
Mm-hmm. China has become the leading trading partner of Africa. When you look at all nations in Africa combined, China is the number one trading partner with Africa now.
And I hate to say this, but the truth is that to those in power, and I'm speaking spiritually right now, Africa is just a big Walmart. It's a place to go and get things.
Raw materials Walmart.
Exactly, raw materials Walmart. And that is horrific because there are wonderful, men and women living in Africa and many, many countries within it that they are essentially, they're collateral damage in a spiritual war. And it makes it more difficult to go in there with the gospel message.
Yeah. Yeah, pray for the people of, Yemen and Zimbabwe. And, there are so many places in the world where it is spiritually very dark. There was a time 150 years ago, maybe 125 years ago, when a lot of the settlers, it was a very productive, very prosperous part of Africa, South Africa and Rhodesia, because of settlers from the UK, from the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. But, obviously they didn't treat, from what little I know of the history of that part of the world, those settlers weren't, let's say, any more entitled to that land than our ancestors were here in this country.
It's true.
Yeah. Being perfectly honest, I've got ancestors that have been in on this continent for almost 400 years now. I think the earliest of my ancestors got here about 1622. But obviously there were people already here who had to get pushed out of the way so that my ancestors could set up farms and farmsteads and so forth. Okay, what do we do about that now? I don't know. Come quickly, Lord. There's no way we can make enough reparations to clean up the mess that we have created on this earth that he created for us.
No, that's true. I was just looking really quickly at the...
But when you look at what Mugabe did to try to make things right, saying things like the only white man you can trust is a dead white man. That's a quote from Robert Mugabe.
Yeah, I know.
So it doesn't justify... he was not justified by whatever wrongs may have been done prior, but
But that's another sign that the spirits really they're afraid of human beings actually loving one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's make sure that they never get together and never really, see the love of Christ, because if we can just keep them hating each other and killing each other, then it not only makes our job easier, it's more bloodshed, helps feed the machine.
Yeah. Yeah. What a world. Well, that's why we do what we do here at P.I.D. Radio. That's why we've been led down this path.
This crazy path.
Yeah. When you start looking at this through a set of spiritual eyes, try to look at it through a biblical lens, it's pretty clear that there's more going on than you can explain by using the tools that most of us were given in our secular educations. Psychology, sociology, anthropology does not explain what we see when we look at history.
No, it doesn't. The other thing that I would advise you, not only to, when you see a headline, to start asking yourself, what are the spirits behind this and what is their goal? But also, when there's a major headline that's trumpeted through social media and every news source, and if you still watch television news, then you're seeing it there too, ask yourself, why is this soaking up so much of the oxygen in the virtual room? Mm-hmm. Is there something going on that I shouldn't see?
That's a really good point.
And along that, a corollary to that is, when there's a weekend or a holiday, pay close attention to what's taking place, because often that's when things will sneak past. Sort of like this bill that was just passed by that committee.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, I was looking up the etymology of the word patriot. And of course, it's based on the Latin word for father, this idea of, your home, your father country, the homeland. But it also, beginning in about the mid 1800s, it became a derogatory term.
Really?
Calling someone a patriot was essentially calling them a fool.
It was an insult.
Was an insult.
You're too stupid to think for yourself. You're just going to believe whatever the government tells you.
Pretty much. Except here in the United States, in America, in the early days, we took that term and ran with it. So it's in Europe that the word patriot is considered, possibly not during, Second World War Germany.
Yeah.
Beginning with
because there was a very nationalistic drive there in Germany and in Italy. Yes,
there was a reason why it was called the fatherland.
Yeah, and in Russia it's the motherland, and here we've got the homeland. I still think I really the name Department of Homeland Security has always
it's
made
creepy.
It has always creeped
like
me
it.
out.
Yeah, me
neither.
too.
Me neither. Well, one final story, I guess, because we're already at an hour. This has gone by very, very quickly.
What?
Yeah. I think most of us who have a smartphone realize that we can be tracked if we're using the phone. What I think Android users may not be aware, and this was just reported by Quartz this past week, quartz.com, Google is collecting the locations of Android users even when location services are disabled. Yeah. I mean, if you turn off location services, which is what apps use to serve up custom information. Hey, you're in this neighborhood and this restaurant's got a
sale over here.
Sale over here. Yeah, sometimes it can be really specific, like when you're walking into a mall. Welcome back. You get a text message. This happened when Nicole and I went to that
I know. Suddenly
mall
you're
one
in
time.
Minority Report.
It was like that. Hey, 15% off at such and such a store. But Google has been doing this with Android devices, even when location services are turned off and there's no SIM card.
No SIM card?
No SIM card for a carrier. It's still tracking the addresses of nearby cell towers and reporting it back to Google. So, and Quartz confirmed this with Google. Contacted Google and said, "Oh yeah, we've been using cell ID codes as a signal to improve the speed and performance of our message delivery. Yeah, that's it. It's all about."
Yeah,
customer service.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We just want you to be happier.
It's a cookbook.
Good grief. Well, I'm going to do one more story really quickly. Since you said the word customer service, I just had to jump in on this. And this is going to, sorry, it's a family show. So if your children are listening, take the earbuds out of their ears.
Hit pause.
Hit pause. Sex Robot Showroom reveals that they do indeed offer test drives.
Oh, no.
Yes. Oh, yes. Sex dolls.
Oh, wow.
In fact, in shops that offer both human and artificial hosts, whatever you want to call them, many of the customers prefer the artificial one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is, well.
Well, it's don't even want to think about it.
It's a sad comment on the state. Future belongs to those who care enough to show up for it.
Well, that is true, but technology is often driven by the porn and sex online industry.
Yeah, it is. Well, interesting. I wonder if that guy who's formed that new AI religion. This is an ex-Google engineer who's filed the paperwork with the IRS to get 501c3 status for his new AI religion.
Do you
wonder
think
if there will be rites and rituals with
virtual high places?
Virtual high places with his virtual religion. I'm betting that
there are spirits behind it. You better bet there will be.
Yeah.
They like their high places.
My, oh my. Well, we should tell folks that we will be streamed live to the world on the evening of December 6th.
Poor world.
Yeah. We're taking over one cell tower at a time, one streaming device at a time.
One byte, BYTE, at a time.
Yeah. Sam came up with that slogan.
He did.
Yeah.
He likes it.
Yeah. We will be at Morningside Church, which is Jim and Lori Baker's place, on the 7th to record programs with Tom Horn. But we'll be there as part of their evening service that they call The Prophets Speak on December 6th. Now, we are not prophets.
We do not consider ourselves prophets at all. That's the term. That's the name that they've chosen to give it. Derek and I consider ourselves teachers. Yeah. Well, actually, we're more blatherers.
Right.
So bring your boxes of Depends, because someone will need to enforce blather control.
Blather control, yes. So if you want to watch that, you can find the, and we don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but
we have no idea. We'll probably just blather, because that's what we do. 7
p.m. Central Time. That's UTC minus 6 if you're outside the United States, but you can watch the stream live at ptlnetwork.com. That's ptlnetwork.com. And if you want to stick around, then the following day, you can watch on the live stream beginning at noon Central Time.
Noonish.
Yes,
There's
noonish is correct.
Ish to it.
Yeah, because it depends on what else Jim is doing that day. But somewhere around noon, we will be there with Tom Horn. And when you get Tom, Sharon, and me on the same panel, we could go for 5 or 6 hours and just have a great time.
We really could. And honestly, in many ways, Derek and I are like, the sidekicks, because Tom will talk a lot, and I'm always glad to hear him. One of my favorite things, some of my favorite programs on Skywatch TV are when Tom joins us, and we get just to hear him just jabber on, talk about blather.
Yeah, and he says he's got a lousy memory, but he starts, coming up with these rituals and these names and these things. Like
he does not.
He's fooling you. He's like one of those. It's like, Sun Tzu in The Art of War. When your enemy thinks you're strong, make believe you're weak. So he's like, I'm just this old fat country preacher. And he's got a mind like a steel trap.
Oh, he does. He was probably bitten by a spider at one point in his youth who did give him superpowers.
I bet that's right.
Oh, yeah.
I bet that's right.
You got superpowers, and so did I. It's just we're sidekicks.
That's it.
We're in the sidekick lounge.
That's right. It's out back. It's got the door with the little moon cut in it.
If you're lucky.
Yeah. Sharon's next novel is, you're working hard on that.
I'm still hammering at it. I'm trying really hard. I've got a hard deadline. It's hard-ish, of December 10th to hand it off to be laid out. But I'm really, really excited about where the characters are going. I posted something to Facebook today talking about what it's like to totally rewrite a novel. I wrote the bones to this novel, the first draft of it, a year ago, over a year ago. So to go back now and see where I've fine-tuned books 1 and 2, and the characters and plot lines I've totally added, and I love it. It's wonderful, but it's taken a little bit of time. So pray for me that I'm able to meet that December 10th deadline.
She's been working really, really hard, spending most every day, and most of each day is spent in front of that computer. So she's been working on that. And The Blood is the Life is the title of Book 3 of the Red Wing Saga. If all goes well, should be out at Christmas.
That's the prayer, is that will be available December 25th. And if the Lord lets me finish it earlier, then great. But, we'll see. I know he's got a plan.
And my new book, co-authored with Josh Peck, The Day the Earth Stands Still, that's the feature of the series that we're in the middle of now on Skywatch TV. So that will be out officially December 1st.
Also, by the way, those of you, and I can't wait to see that book, by the way.
Oh,
yeah, I know
another great cover.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. There are many of you who listen to this and who watch the programming on Skywatch TV. You guys are wonderful to subscribe to the magazine, and we so appreciate that.
Yes.
I designed that magazine, and because I have been working like crazy to try to finish this book, I was a little slower on the finishing it. Also, there were Christmas ads that we were trying to put in, Christmas offers to give you some great deals for Christmas. So the magazine is coming. It should get in your mailbox in the next week to 10 days. It will not get into the studio until probably next Tuesday or Wednesday. It just, and I apologize for that. It just sometimes happens, but we've got a new designer. It's going to be starting in January of next year, and he will be taking over the reins. I cannot wait to get that off my plate.
Yeah.
I love the magazine, but it's 2 weeks out of the month that I could be writing.
Yeah.
Well, should be writing.
It's exciting things going on at Skywatch TV, and not just, your support through subscribing to the magazine, but your support, your prayers, very much appreciated for the ministry. 2018 going to be an exciting year because that'll be the first summer of a full slate of camps with Royal Family kids.
Oh, yeah.
And working with those kids who've been abused, foster children who have been abused. That's why we do what we do at Skywatch TV. So if you ever wonder why we're all the time pitching a book or a DVD or something, it's because all of those funds go to support Whispering Ponies Ranch.
Yeah, seriously, it does.
So that Royal Family Kids doesn't have to pay a dime.
No.
That's the goal.
That is the goal. By the way, if you are listening to this and you found the link on the Facebook page, please in the comments put, whether or not you think that PID Radio is something you want to hear more from, because as we've mentioned at the top, we've taken the last year off. Mm-hmm. Really haven't, and even before that, we hadn't done that many because our time is pretty precious. But if it's something that you find useful, mm-hmm. we're happy to take a couple of hours out of each week and go back to producing these. Yeah. I mean, the research to put it together is stuff that we have to do anyway for the writing and the work we do at Skywatch TV. And actually, the recording and the production time is actually pretty minimal. We've got it over the last 12 years down to a pretty easy format here. So I can turn this around and have this online within an hour of us finishing the show. So that's the least of the amount of time. So if you enjoy it, if this is a blessing to you, just let us know about that. Yeah, thank you.
Well, till next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. PID Radio is a production of Gilbert House Ministries. The opening theme is adapted from The Alchemist's Tower by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com. The closing theme is New Day Coming by Steve Grace, stevegrace.com. Our website is pidradio.com, where you'll find the show notes, links to our personal websites, our books, our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, and links to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The content of this program is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License. For more information, see creativecommons.org.
Gonna step up to the microphone, say it loud and clear. A better day is coming soon to get us out of here.